We're out for lunch break, and we started the day with a new Ranger Patrick Apley. He's been with the BLM for 16 years since 2001. They brought up immediately that he does have the authority to make arrests. He, before that, worked with the Department of Defense as a police officer and was in the military from 88 to 95, the U.S. Army. He has combat medic and nurse experience, and he was in the first Gulf War under hostile fire, he says. He was originally to provide security for the compound post. On the day of the 11th, it looks like, he was asked if he received a briefing, and he said no. But he was told that they were to stay over it, that they could not go back to their hotel rooms, because if they did, they were going to be jumped. Now, we're finally getting to why they all stayed at the compound overnight. This is another agent that he said he did get minimal sleep, a few little times that he was lightly able to go to sleep. On April 12th, he says, there were no orders in the morning. It's kind of coming out that basically through this entire operation, everyone has limited comms. All their radios were dead. There was maybe a group of people. And you could tell by his body cam footage that nobody was really getting orders. Everyone was just taking it upon themselves to do whatever they were doing, to move wherever they were going. And on the morning of April the 12th, he was up at Post 1. He talks about the silver SUV again. He talks about the SWAT team comes in and Metro come in, and they said that they needed to put their long guns away. Now, he didn't have his long gun at this time, so he was like, I didn't need to do anything because I didn't have my long gun. And they were told to move back. He moved back, and then they were told to move out of sight. And Metro then took over Post 1. He said Special Agent Lauren Good then did come to him and say that she wanted him to be the arresting officer and to set up a detention area at that area that they were just past Post 1 where people couldn't see them. So he's there for a while. Dan Love is in the video. Dan Love is there as well. They go and they're talking about making he's got a prisoner cage in his truck, and his radios died overnight. We're hearing the same radio chatter about the horses coming, people with guns. The SWAT truck is in the area, the detention area that he's in, but no SWAT people were deployed. He said that he didn't believe it was a protest because normally in a protest you do not bring guns. There was an objection to this because he's saying normally in a protest, and attesting to what a protest normally is, there was an objection, and the judge leads Myrie gives it a reason that he should be able to continue, which is not an adequate reason, so the judge leads him to an adequate reason to continue. Apparently he's been involved in 3 or 4 different protests because he normally is involved in the wild horse roundups or the burro roundups. I don't know if any of you guys have seen those videos, but if you haven't, I would definitely say look into it. They round up these animals with helicopters and things. It's not great. Also on the radio, it comes out that they're talking about a person with an M4, which is an AR-15, on the bridge with a scope and a mag. He says that this is dangerous because an M4 is a military gun and they have the high ground. The range on that gun is 500 meters for a point target and 600 for an area target. He's attesting to this. He then goes down into the wash while this radio, he's hearing the radio as he's transferring down to the wash. And immediately as he gets to the wash, he pulls his gun out. Now, he was told to take his gun and put it away before he even left the other area, and he didn't have to do that because he didn't have his gun on him, but then he gets down into the wash and immediately takes it out. He does that because he sees other officers with their ARs. He's down there because, and he voluntarily went, no one told him to go down there. He's down there because if there was injuries, he was going to treat injuries, so he gets together with another medic. Then he talks about a fatal funnel. And he's saying that this area down at the wash is a fatal funnel for them because the other protesters have the high ground, and the terrain naturally funnels it down so that it would be easy for them to shoot the agents. He said his entire time his AR was in the low ready position and he was working in a medical role. We go back into the video. At one point in the video, a guy says it's fairly nice when you have no comms because your radio died. You know, so we're going back into the, you know, none of them have radios. They get them from their trucks, or they're all stationed by their trucks, or one of their people has a radio. As he's at the truck, he's further back. Then he moves forward to the third closest vehicle to the gate, the one that has Swanson, Richardson, and another guy, Kyle G. I can't say his last name. And they were watching people on the bridge with their rifles, so basically through the scope of their rifles. He was using the optic on his rifle to view the guys with guns on the bridge. So basically here they're saying, yes, they were pointing weapons at the protesters, but it was just so that they could see through their scopes. In the background, you see Dan Love walk backwards with Dennis Michael Lynch and one of the Bundy family, leaving the fenced area. As he's walking down to his position, you see Dan Love come and walk through that area. Then at this point, he's walking back. Let's see. He said he when they were asked to fall back, he still feared because they still had guns up on the bridge, and Metro and Highway Patrol did nothing to take care of those guys. So when they were falling back, he was feeling like Metro and the Highway Patrol didn't do what he wanted. He attests that his fear began at 11:55 when he got down into the wash and did not return back to normal until he got back to his regular duty post after he got back to Vegas. He rated this event at a 7 for violence based on his combat days in the military, and rated it an 8 based on his law enforcement days. It was a long day, really boring going through his body cam. Parts of this body cam have been brought in with other witnesses. We've watched one portion of this body cam 3 times now. So you can definitely tell the jury is just sitting there bored to death. So that was pretty much the entire morning. We got Tomasi for Stewart up first at cross-examination. He immediately goes into same things we have. How many times did you meet with the U.S. Attorney's Office? 3 times. Met with the FBI on April 15th. Then he goes right into, is it true you were asked to put your to get your long guns out of sight? He said yes. He said that Ranger Nicholas told him to put the long guns away. Then he was asked, well, then why, when you go down to the wash, do you immediately get your long gun out? He doesn't really have an answer for that. And then they start playing the footage, and they go to portions of the footage, and they're saying, okay, well, here you're walking in this fatal funnel with your back to the bridge. So if this is your fatal funnel, but here you can show yourself, you're not even caring that these people have guns behind you, and you're walking with your back to the bridge. At that point, you can hear the video, and you're like, what do you hear him say right here? And he says, isn't this fun? Still with his back to the bridge, walking away. Then they point out many other people walking to and from in this fatal funnel, obviously not taking cover and not being worried about it. Then they talk about Dan Love, who goes down into the exact area of the fatal funnel with no protection, no people around him. He walks all the way up to the gate, gets the people, then they all turn their backs to the bridges and walk back through the fatal funnel all the way back, obviously not in fear of their life. I believe the jury really responded well to all this. You know, it wasn't really the questioning, it's the questions that go out that the jury already knows the answer. It doesn't matter what the guy says. Let's see. Then they talk about the Metro officers walking in the fatal funnel, obviously not in fear of their life. Another big point here is they're trying to say that, you know, the protesters are the reason that the traffic jam. So here he brings up that there was a news truck on the freeway, there was the SWAT truck and Metro officers, and that all of that could be used to slow traffic. There's some objections, and they have to reword some things to get through this. Another thing, he was asked if he had authorization to use deadly force, and he said yes. He's like, but you didn't use it. And then they brought up again the flat top, which is the mesa with the actual high ground, that there were people up there. Then he pulls out his MOA and he says, he asks him a few questions, and he's saying, so you saw the protesters do this? And the guy says, no, I saw people. And there was about 5 minutes in there where we were arguing the word protester versus people. So then he brings out his MOA and he says, okay, here, what I'm asking you, and you refuse, you're saying people, but in your MOA you wrote protester. The questioning goes on like this a couple times. He makes them say protester about 10 times in a row, pretty much impeaches him immediately, then continues to make him say protester again. This is the same kind of stuff we're seeing every day. Then Jess goes up and talks about his medical. After you left Post 1, you understood that Metro had taken over Post 1. So they brought that up, that once they were told to back up out of Post 1 before he goes down into the wash, Metro actually took over Post 1, and they had just moved back out of sight and were setting up a detention area, which I'm not even sure if that was, who authorized all of that. Then we go back to the horses, as he keeps talking about the horses being a super threat, and then was asked if they eventually came over the gates and took the cows back, and he says yes. And he's like, well, what I'm saying is they were let through the gates to get the cows. And he's like, well, let me ask you, did they break through the gate to get the horses? And he said no. And he's like, did they go over the gate to get the horses, to get the cows? And he said no. I think the last part that we end on is the very end of his body cam. At the very end of his body cam, he goes up to a group of people, and the group of people are having a discussion, and they start talking about we should have an impromptu church. And it's really hard to make out what they're saying because there's wind, but they're having this conversation, and he immediately turns his body cam off. Now, when he says he turns his body cam off indirect, he says that he did it because he was angry. And that's why he turned his body cam off, is because he was angry and that he didn't want to record the bloodshed. So here in cross-examination, Josh brings up, well, you're having this conversation, you come up and you turn your body cam off. Is not this the time that you would want to be recording, to have this on the record? But instead you walk up in this group of people who are aiming rifles and having this discussion, and you immediately turn your body cam off. And that's pretty much where we left the end of the day. We go back into cross-examination. That's all I got.
Awesome. We'll be back this afternoon. Encore.
So if you start it one way and then turn it,
it doesn't
turn with you.
It didn't.
That's okay.
All right.
It was sideways.
That's okay. The people in Idaho won't mind. All they want is the info. Okay.
Now, I don't know how to change my...
There's a magic wand. What does that thing do? I'm gonna fall over. Wait, hold on. It says...
Okay, you can do that.
For the defense.
Trying to minimize the... Why do we have a small screen?
But he was able to bring it back.
Oh, you look good. All right, we're live. We're live.
Are you ready, Doug?
Okay, going live. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're live.
Okay, so we go back in on cross-examination of... Gosh, what was his name? There's so many notes. Apley. And we go back in, and they go back into he turned his body cam off because he got mad and he did not want to record the mayhem, was his actual words, the mayhem. And then body cams are made to record events, and you chose to turn yours off right when you believed an event was about to happen. And then they also go into why you have a body cam, why police officers have body cams to record events. He said that he would, or to also record if agents are making correct judgments. He said he offered, or he volunteered to have a body cam, and that was moved on through. Now we go into Engel, and he asked if observing people through a scope is common practice. It was objected to. He rephrased it a few times. It was still objected to. He said, were you ever trained to observe people through a rifle scope? And the guy said no. And then they were asking, was that gun pointed downrange? These people wearing body armor, helmets, and carrying rifles. He tried to go into, do they look militant? Do they look military? It was objected to. They wouldn't let it out there. Then he goes into, are you familiar with the 4 rules of firearm safety? At this point, the witness is not answering the question, but then asking him what his point to the question is, instead of just answering the question. Well, I don't see where you're going with this, he says. And he's all, well, you know, like, always keep your firearm on safety, blah, you know. And he's like, do you know that you should never point your rifle at something that you were not prepared to destroy? That was objected to, but at least the jury heard it, and he finished. Perez got up and asked if on the morning of the 11th, if there was a briefing, job duties given for the day. He said yes, and he said on the 12th, was there a morning briefing? He said no. He said Briscoe was his supervisor, and so he said, so anything you were to do on the 12th, you knew that you were supposed to do that on the night of the 11th? And he said yes, which is really hard to believe because they didn't even know what was going to happen on the 12th, and so that's interesting. Jackson just goes back into a lot of the body cam stuff. Was asking if he was issued a ballistic helmet and if other agents were issued ballistic helmets, because he said so in his direct examination. And then he was asked why he wasn't wearing his ballistic helmet, and he said he didn't have it with him. And then he was asked why other agents weren't wearing their ballistic helmets. You know, they came prepared with all of their weapons, but they didn't have their ballistic helmets. Kind of goes to say, if you were in fear of your life, would you not have your helmet on? Then Todd Leventhal gets up and he tries to enter a picture of the ICP. And it was the, asking the guy, and now this Ranger Apley, he was actually brought in to protect the cattle and the ICP. He was security officer for the cattle and the ICP. Leventhal pulls up this picture. We don't get to see it. The jury doesn't get to see it. And he asks, is this an accurate picture of the ICP? Actually, first he pulls up an old picture and circles an area, and he says, what is this area? And he says, natural ground in the area. And so he goes, huh. Pulls up the picture of the ICP, and he says, this area look right to you? There was an objection to it. He tried to put it into evidence. There was objection to it because it wasn't relevant. He argues that it is relevant. It's a picture of the ICP, and he wants to go into some things that are pictured in this picture. Myrie says that's exactly what we're objecting to, and she doesn't allow it to be entered into evidence. Then, when the government goes back to redirect after, it was asked, was it illegal to have your weapon on you in the wash? And this is after he was told by Metro to put his long gun away. And he said, no, I am allowed to carry my weapon when I feel it is needed. So basically here they had Metro tell him to put their long guns away. He went down in the wash, got his long gun out, and started to work down there after he was told to put it away. Then he asked if he was in fear of Dan Levin, the Metro, who had their backs to the wash while they were walking away, and he said yes. Next, the government calls Tony Szymanski. She is a BLM Communication Center manager for many different states. They run plates for dispatch for BLM, for Fish and Game, for Park Service in multiple states, so they're like a command center for those agencies. She's computer aid dispatch. She uses different tools daily on the job. When she was first told she was going to be involved in Gold Butte, her role was just going to be counting cattle and keeping track of law enforcement officers and the other non-law enforcement officers that were working on the project. She says that's like saying this officer's going to this area, they make sure they get there safely, they make sure they get back safely, and keeping count on the cattle. She got there March 28th. She said that her duties did change drastically. They only brought certain equipment to do that cattle count. They didn't bring all the equipment that they normally used for running plates, for dispatch, for all of these things. So when her role changed to looking up people, the bolos, the running license plates, she didn't have the adequate equipment to do her job. She did say she had a team of 5 or 6. Oh no, the day shift was 4 and the night shift was 1, so she had a team of 5. On the night of the 11th, they started to take down the command center. They took it down to half, and they sent half home, and so that left 3. And then one of those 3 had to go home because she was not fit to work. She was too stressed out. And that was before the morning. She said when she packed up, she took the primary and secondary computer and kept working from Las Vegas because of threats all the way up until April 22nd. Then we go through a lot of her, what she does basically is listen to the radio and type in the information so that everything has a timestamp, and she is the one that would call Metro or call the Nevada Highway Patrol and communicate back and forth. She also communicated with, what was her name? The undercover agent. I want to say it's Rachel, but let's see. And I don't see her name. Robin Kirkland. So she was the one, and she said she uses Google Chat to communicate with Robin, and Robin was with the FBI at the time. So she was not on site, and she was communicating with her. She said at sometime on the 12th, when they were packing up the last of the stuff, they realized that none of the radio information was being recorded, which it normally is being recorded. Like, they record it manually, but there's also an audio recording. At some point between the night of the 11th and the morning of the 12th, someone unplugged the hard drive, or the hard drive became unplugged, and they didn't record any of the radio communication on the day of the 12th. In cross-examination, they asked some things about shredding documents. She was the one that shredded all the documents. She said that she was pulling out information and printing up information from government agencies, and that's why they had to shred the documents afterwards, because they were sensitive documents for people who, only certain people with the right clearance can view these, and they're sensitive because they have names and numbers and things that shouldn't be out. So she was shredding documents the entire time, and she was the one that shredded documents on the night of the 11th and the morning of the 12th. Engel brought up, she had mentioned that she had undercovers in the crowd, and that is why they did not deploy the less than lethal. And they were asked if she knew how many. She didn't know. That was coming from Robin Kirkham. Just went into how the information was coming to her. She does not recall that anyone said that they saw someone pointing a weapon. Jackson goes up and asks if she had training in the FBI or law enforcement to do the duties. She said yes, but they did not teach her to set up the system. She learned that from experience. John Foley oversaw the communication. ComSite, he was non-law enforcement BLM. He was in the room with her. The system was not set up to reach police or FBI. She had cell phones to do that. And that the hard drive was not attached, and that they were communicating with Robin Kirkham over Google Chat, and there was FBI special agents in the crowd, basically. So we go back in. I think they're going to call another witness because we finished with this witness. And, you know, I'm really disappointed with any of the lawyers because not one lawyer went up there and asked, was Dan Love ever in the communication building? Who had access to unplug that hard drive? You know, these are the questions that needed to be asked, and not one of the lawyers did it. You know, what we saw in the last half of the day was pretty rough because here they're saying a picture of the BLM's ICP site is not relevant to this case. How is that possible? You know, they're saying, they go out and they say, well, all of our radio transmissions were not recorded because the hard drive was unplugged, but nobody's asked who's responsible for that. That was not brought up. She also brought up that she, as well, did not sleep in her car over the whole night of the 11th into the 12th, and that one of her agents that she had to send home was so stressed out because and unfit for duty. She didn't say why, but she was stressed out and unfit for duty and had to be sent home. So a normal team of 4 people, 2 people were doing the job. And they're supposedly kept up with what they could and only recorded the relevant things, and nothing else was recorded, so we don't even know what the non-relevant things were. So we come back tomorrow with a new witness, and they didn't say who that was, so we'll see tomorrow.
Any word on Dennis Michael Lynch?
Dennis Michael Lynch most likely will not be here this week. I hear that there's just FBI agents coming, possibly. I don't really know, but that's what I heard. Didn't look like Dennis Michael Lynch will be here this week, possibly next.
Thank you.
So are they planning on having court all the way through Friday?
They don't. Fridays are always dark.